"I have nowhere to go," said the pregnant young woman, sitting on the cold pavement. The millionaire walking by could have ignored her like everyone else. But what he did next changed everything forever. The rain began to fall on the streets of downtown Manhattan as evening approached, turning the bustling sidewalks into rivers of umbrellas and hurried footsteps. Among the sea of people rushing to escape the weather, one figure remained motionless on the concrete steps of the old library building. Isabella Martinez clutched her swollen belly with trembling hands, her worn shoes soaked through from hours of sitting in the same spot. At barely 19, she carried not just the weight of her unborn child, but the crushing burden of complete abandonment. The cardboard sign beside her, written in desperate handwriting, read simply, "Pregnant, homeless, please help." Most passers-by averted their eyes, quickening their pace as if poverty might be contagious. Some dropped loose change without breaking stride, their consciences momentarily appeased by the metallic clink against the wet pavement. But Isabella had stopped counting the coins hours ago. What she needed wasn't charity, it was hope. "Miss, you can't stay here overnight," called Officer Martinez from across the street, his voice carrying the weary tone of someone who'd had this conversation countless times before. Isabella looked up with eyes that held both defiance and despair. She had nowhere else to go, and they both knew it. 3 blocks away, in the glass tower that pierced the Manhattan sky like a steel needle, Sebastian Blackwood stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. The 34-year-old real estate mogul owned half the buildings visible from his vantage point, his empire built on calculated risks and ruthless efficiency. His net worth exceeded the gross domestic product of small nations, yet tonight he felt strangely restless. "Sir, your car is waiting downstairs," announced his assistant through the intercom. Sebastian adjusted his watch, a timepiece worth more than most people's annual salaries, and gathered his belongings. Another day, another million earned. The routine had become as predictable as the sunrise. As Sebastian's private elevator descended from the 42nd floor, Isabella struggled to her feet on the library steps. The baby kicked forcefully, a reminder that time was running out. She had been evicted from her tiny apartment weeks earlier when her boyfriend Marcus abandoned her upon learning of the pregnancy. Her family had disowned her for refusing to give up the child, and the women's shelters were all at capacity. The elevator doors opened to reveal the marble lobby of Blackwood Tower, where Sebastian's security team waited with practiced efficiency. They escorted him through the revolving doors to where his black sedan idled at the curb. The driver, James, had worked for Sebastian for years, but their relationship remained strictly professional. Sebastian preferred it that way. Emotional attachments complicated business decisions. "The usual route, sir?" James inquired as Sebastian settled into the leather seats. "Actually, take the long way. I need to make a call," Sebastian replied, pulling out his phone to check the overseas markets. Money never slept, and neither did opportunity. Meanwhile, Isabella had begun the painful walk toward the subway station. Her back ached with each step, and the baby seemed to sense her distress, moving restlessly within her womb. She had exactly $4 in her pocket, enough for a subway ride, but not much else. The plan was to find a warm place to spend the night, perhaps the 24-hour diner on the east side where sympathetic staff might let her rest in a corner booth. As Sebastian's sedan navigated the evening traffic, he found himself studying the faces of pedestrians through the tinted windows. There was something unsettling about the isolation his wealth provided, a barrier between him and the raw humanity that surrounded him daily. He pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on tomorrow's board meeting, where they would discuss acquiring another property block. Isabella had made it halfway to the subway when the contractions began. They started as a dull ache, easily dismissed as fatigue, but quickly intensified into waves of pain that doubled her over. She gripped a lamppost for support, breathing heavily as concerned strangers gathered around her. "Someone call an ambulance!" shouted a woman with kind eyes, but Isabella shook her head frantically. "No hospital," she gasped between contractions. "No insurance. Can't afford—" The crowd exchanged uncomfortable glances. Everyone wanted to help, but few knew how to navigate the harsh realities of American healthcare for the uninsured. As Isabella fought through another contraction, Sebastian's sedan approached the same intersection, delayed by the gathering crowd. "What's the holdup, James?" Sebastian asked, glancing up from his phone for the first time since entering the car. Some kind of medical emergency, sir. We'll be moving shortly. Sebastian returned to his screen, but something made him look up again. Through the crowd, he caught a glimpse of a young woman in obvious distress, her hand pressed against her pregnant belly. For reasons he couldn't explain, the sight stopped him cold. "Pull over," he said suddenly. "Sir, I said pull over. Now." James maneuvered the sedan to the curb, confusion evident in his voice. In all his years of service, Sebastian had never shown interest in street incidents. The wealthy man stepped out into the rain, his expensive shoes clicking against the wet pavement as he approached the crowd. Isabella was on her knees now, tears mixing with raindrops on her face. The contractions were coming faster, and panic was setting in. This couldn't be happening here. Not like this. Not when she had nothing, and no one. "Please," she whispered to no one in particular, her voice breaking. "I have nowhere to go." That's when she looked up and saw him, a tall figure in an expensive coat, standing at the edge of the crowd. Their eyes met for just a moment, and in that instant, something passed between them that neither could name. Sebastian saw past the worn clothes and desperate circumstances to the scared young woman beneath. Isabella saw past the wealth and privilege to something she hadn't expected, genuine concern. What Sebastian did next would shock everyone present, including himself. But more importantly, it would set in motion a chain of events that would change 2 lives forever, proving that sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most extraordinary transformations. Without hesitation, Sebastian pushed through the crowd, his presence commanding immediate attention. The expensive fabric of his coat darkened with raindrops as he knelt beside Isabella, ignoring the puddle forming beneath his knees. "We need to get you to a hospital immediately," he said, his voice calm but urgent. Isabella looked up at him through pain-filled eyes, shaking her head weakly. "I can't. No money. They'll just—" Another contraction cut off her words, leaving her gasping for breath. Sebastian's mind raced. He had built his empire by making split-second decisions, but this was different. This wasn't about profit margins or market projections. This was about a human life hanging in the balance. 2 lives, actually. "James," he called to his driver, who was already approaching with an umbrella. "Get the car ready. We're going to Metropolitan General." "Sir, perhaps we should wait for the ambulance," James suggested cautiously, but Sebastian was already lifting Isabella's arm over his shoulder. "There's no time. Help me get her to the car." Isabella tried to protest, but the pain was overwhelming. As Sebastian and James carefully guided her toward the sedan, she found herself clinging to this stranger's arm, drawing strength from his unwavering confidence. The crowd watched in stunned silence as one of the city's most powerful men personally assisted a homeless pregnant woman into his private vehicle. "What's your name?" Sebastian asked as James pulled into traffic, the car's emergency flashes cutting through the evening darkness. "Isabella," she managed between shallow breaths. "Isabella Martinez. I'm Sebastian. Try to breathe slowly, Isabella. We'll be there soon." During the tense ride to the hospital, Sebastian found himself studying this young woman who had somehow disrupted his carefully ordered world. Her face, despite being etched with pain and exhaustion, held a strength that intrigued him. There was something in her eyes, a determination that reminded him of his own mother, who had fought tooth and nail to give him opportunities she never had. "Why?" Isabella whispered, her voice barely audible over the city sounds rushing past the windows. "Why what? Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Sebastian paused, surprised by the question. He had asked himself the same thing from the moment he stepped out of his car. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply, though he suspected there was more to it than that. At Metropolitan General, Sebastian's arrival caused an immediate stir. The emergency staff knew him by reputation. The Blackwood Foundation had donated millions to the hospital over the years. When he walked through the doors supporting a pregnant woman in labor, whispers spread through the corridors like wildfire. "We need a room immediately," Sebastian announced to the triage nurse, his tone brooking no argument. "Sir, we'll need to check her insurance information first. Bill everything to my account. Room, now." Within minutes, Isabella was being wheeled into a private birthing suite, the best the hospital had to offer. As the medical team took over, Sebastian found himself relegated to the hallway, pacing like an expectant father. The irony wasn't lost on him. He who controlled multi-million-dollar deals was now powerless, waiting for news from doctors he couldn't negotiate with. Dr. Rachel Kim, the hospital's chief of obstetrics, emerged from the room after what felt like hours, but had only been 40 minutes. Sebastian approached her immediately, searching her face for answers. "The baby is fine, but it was close," Dr. Kim explained. "The mother was severely dehydrated and malnourished. She's been living rough for some time, I'd guess. The stress triggered premature labor, but we've managed to stop it for now. And Isabella? She's stable, but she needs rest, proper nutrition, and a stress-free environment. From what I understand, those aren't luxuries she can afford right now." Sebastian nodded grimly. He had suspected as much from her appearance and circumstances. "Can I see her?" When Sebastian entered the room, he found Isabella connected to various monitors, an IV drip in her arm. She looked impossibly young lying in the hospital bed, her dark hair spread across the white pillow. Her eyes opened as he approached, and she attempted a weak smile. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't need to repay anything. Just focus on getting better." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "The doctor said I could have lost the baby. If you hadn't been there." She couldn't finish the sentence. Sebastian pulled a chair closer to her bed, surprising himself with the gesture. He typically maintained professional distance even in personal situations. "Tell me about yourself, Isabella. Where's your family?" The question seemed to cause her physical pain. "My parents. They didn't approve of my choices. When I refused to give up the baby, they said I wasn't their daughter anymore. My boyfriend Marcus left when he found out I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready to be tied down. And the father's family? Marcus made it clear he wants nothing to do with us. His parents have money and lawyers. They made sure I understood that any attempt to contact them would be unwelcome." Sebastian felt a familiar anger rising in his chest, the same feeling he got when witnessing injustice in business dealings. But this was more personal somehow. "Where have you been staying?" "Shelters, when there's space. The streets when there isn't. I had a job at a diner, but morning sickness made me unreliable. They had to let me go." Isabella's voice cracked with the weight of her circumstances. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. A hospital administrator entered, her expression nervous as she recognized Sebastian. "Mr. Blackwood, I hate to disturb you, but there are some forms regarding the patient's care that need to be addressed." "Handle whatever needs to be handled," Sebastian replied without taking his eyes off Isabella. "I want her to have the best care available." After the administrator left, Isabella stared at Sebastian in disbelief. "I can't let you do this. The cost must be enormous." "The cost is irrelevant." "But why? I'm nobody special. I'm just a girl who made bad choices and ended up on the street." Sebastian leaned forward, his expression serious. "Isabella, I've spent years surrounded by people who think their worth is measured by their bank accounts or their family names. In the span of one evening, you've shown more courage and strength than most of them display in a lifetime." "Courage? I was terrified." "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. You've been fighting to protect your child under impossible circumstances. That takes real strength." Isabella wiped away tears with the back of her hand. "I don't feel strong. I feel like I've failed at everything." "Then let me tell you what I see," Sebastian said, his voice gentle but firm. "I see a young woman who refused to take the easy way out when it would have disappointed people she cared about. I see someone who's been beaten down by circumstances but hasn't given up. I see a mother who was willing to give birth on a street corner rather than abandon her child." The room fell silent, except for the steady beeping of medical equipment. Isabella stared at this man who had appeared in her darkest moment like some kind of guardian angel. But she could sense there was more to his story too. "What about you?" she asked quietly. "Why does helping a stranger matter so much to someone who has everything?" Sebastian's expression grew distant. "Maybe because having everything doesn't always mean having what matters most." Before Isabella could ask what he meant, Dr. Kim returned with a team of nurses for evening rounds. As the medical staff bustled around Isabella's bed, Sebastian stepped back, his phone buzzing with messages he had been ignoring for hours. But as he looked at Isabella, surrounded by the care he had provided, Sebastian realized that for the first time in years those messages didn't seem important. Something was happening here that transcended business deals and profit margins. Something that would challenge everything he thought he knew about success, purpose, and what it meant to truly matter in someone else's life. The unexpected encounter was becoming something neither of them had seen coming, and it was only the beginning. The next morning brought harsh reality crashing down on Isabella like cold water. As she lay in the pristine hospital bed, watching the sunrise paint golden streaks across the Manhattan skyline, the weight of her situation settled heavily on her chest. The IV drip had restored her strength, but with it came the crushing awareness of what accepting Sebastian's help truly meant. She was now indebted to a complete stranger, a wealthy man whose motivations she couldn't fathom. Isabella had learned the hard way that nothing in life came without a price, especially kindness from those who had everything while she had nothing. Dr. Kim entered with her morning rounds, clipboard in hand, and a cautiously optimistic expression. "Your vitals look much better, Isabella. The baby's heartbeat is strong and steady. How are you feeling?" "Physically? Better than I have in weeks," Isabella admitted, then hesitated. "But I need to know something. How much does a stay like this cost?" The doctor's expression grew uncomfortable. "Mr. Blackwood has assured us that all expenses are covered. You don't need to worry about—" "I need to know the amount," Isabella interrupted, her voice firm despite her vulnerable position. "Please, doctor." Kim consulted her tablet, clearly reluctant. "With the emergency treatment, the private room, medications, and monitoring, we're looking at approximately $15,000 so far. If you need to stay longer for observation, it could reach $20,000. The number hit Isabella like a physical blow. $20,000, more money than she had ever seen in her entire life. The crushing weight of that debt settled on her shoulders, making it hard to breathe. "I need to leave," Isabella said suddenly, attempting to sit up. "I can't accept this. I won't be anyone's charity case. Isabella, you're not ready to be discharged. The baby and I survived on the streets for weeks. We'll survive whatever comes next." Isabella's voice carried a fierce pride that surprised even her. She had been knocked down by life repeatedly, but she refused to stay down, especially not at the cost of owing someone like Sebastian Blackwood. Dr. Kim placed a gentle hand on Isabella's arm. "At least wait until Mr. Blackwood arrives. He specifically asked to speak with you this morning." As if summoned by their conversation, a soft knock interrupted them. Sebastian entered carrying a small bouquet of flowers and what appeared to be shopping bags. His appearance was less polished than the night before, his hair slightly disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled as if he had slept in his office chair. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm but cautious. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone who needs to have an honest conversation with you," Isabella replied, her tone sharper than she intended. The flowers in his hands suddenly seemed patronizing rather than thoughtful. Sebastian's expression shifted, recognizing the change in Isabella's demeanor. He set the gifts aside and pulled the chair closer to her bed, the same gesture that had felt comforting the night before now feeling invasive. "I brought you some clothes," he said carefully. "I thought you might want something clean to wear." Isabella stared at the designer shopping bags with a mixture of anger and humiliation. "Let me guess, you had your assistant pick out what you thought a poor pregnant girl should wear?" The sharpness in her voice caught Sebastian off guard. I thought you might need—" "What I need is to understand what you expect in return for all this." Isabella gestured around the expensive private room. "Nobody gives away $20,000 to a stranger without wanting something back. So tell me, Mr. Blackwood, what's the catch?" Sebastian leaned back, clearly unprepared for this confrontation. In his world, money solved problems efficiently and gratefully. He had never encountered someone who questioned his generosity with such fierce suspicion. "There's no catch, Isabella. I helped because you needed help. People like you don't help people like me without a reason. You probably wrote this off as charity for tax purposes, right? Get to feel good about yourself while your accountants make sure it benefits you somehow?" The accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth. Sebastian's charitable donations were indeed tax-deductible, though that hadn't been his motivation the night before. But trying to explain that now seemed futile. "You don't know anything about people like me?" Sebastian said, his own voice taking on an edge. "I know enough. I know that men with money think they can buy whatever they want, including people's gratitude. I know that when someone like you helps someone like me, there are always strings attached." Isabella struggled to sit up fully, her eyes blazing with defiant pride. My ex-boyfriend, Marcus, came from money. His family made it very clear that girls like me are good for one thing: temporary entertainment before they move on to someone more suitable. Is that what this is? Some kind of rescue fantasy? Sebastian felt heat rising in his face. That's completely inappropriate and absolutely not. Then explain it to me! Isabella's voice cracked with emotion. Explain why a millionaire stops his car in the rain for a homeless pregnant girl. Explain why you're here with flowers and designer clothes like this is some kind of romantic movie. Because from where I'm sitting, this feels like every other time a rich man decided I was his project. The room fell into tense silence. Sebastian stared at Isabella, seeing her clearly for the first time, not as a damsel in distress, but as a young woman who had been hurt, used, and abandoned by people who should have protected her. Her suspicion wasn't paranoia. It was survival instinct, learned through painful experience. Dr. Kim cleared her throat uncomfortably. Perhaps I should give you both some privacy to discuss this. After the doctor left, Sebastian ran his hands through his hair, struggling to find words that wouldn't sound patronizing or dismissive. You're right, he said finally. You don't know me, and I don't know you, but you're wrong about my motivations. Then enlighten me. Sebastian stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city where he commanded respect and wielded influence. Here, in this hospital room, facing this defiant young woman, he felt powerless in a way that was both humbling and infuriating. I saw you on that street corner, and for the first time in years, I saw someone who needed help more than they needed anything else. Not a business opportunity, not a tax write-off, not some kind of romantic conquest, just help. He turned back to face her. Maybe that makes me naive. Maybe it makes me an idiot. But I've spent so many years surrounded by people who want things from me that when I met someone who wanted nothing, it felt different. Isabella studied his face, searching for deception. And now? Now that I'm questioning your motives and refusing to play the grateful victim? How does it feel now? Sebastian met her gaze directly. Now it feels real. Now it feels like I'm talking to an actual person instead of a project. The honesty in his voice caught Isabella off guard. She had been prepared for anger, for him to storm out when his charity was questioned. She hadn't expected him to acknowledge the validity of her concerns. I can't accept your help, she said quietly. I won't spend my life owing someone I barely know. Then don't think of it as charity. Think of it as an investment. In what? Sebastian paused, realizing he was about to cross a line that would change everything. In proving that sometimes people help each other for no other reason than because they can. Isabella felt tears threatening, but she blinked them back. And what happens when you get bored of your investment? When the novelty wears off and you remember that you have a real life to get back to? The question hung between them like a challenge. Sebastian realized that his answer wouldn't just determine what happened next between them. It would define what kind of man he truly was when all the wealth and privilege were stripped away. Sebastian stared at Isabella for a long moment, her question echoing in the sterile hospital room like an accusation that cut deeper than she probably intended. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before, stripped of the confident authority that usually commanded boardrooms. You want to know what happens when I get bored? He asked, moving closer to her bed. I'll tell you what I think will happen. I think you're going to prove that every assumption I've ever made about strength and courage was wrong. Isabella narrowed her eyes, suspicious of what sounded like another attempt at charm. What's that supposed to mean? It means that last night, watching you fight through contractions on a street corner while protecting your child, I realized something. I've been surrounded by people who claim to be strong, but they've never been tested. Not really. They've never had to choose between their pride and their survival. Sebastian sat down heavily in the chair, his expensive watch catching the morning light. You asked me why I stopped. The truth is, I don't know. But I think it's because for the first time in years, I saw someone who was fighting for something that actually mattered. Pretty words, Isabella said, though her voice had lost some of its edge. But words don't change the fact that I can't pay you back. Ever. Do you understand what that means for someone like me? Tell me. Isabella's hands moved protectively to her belly. It means I become another story you tell at your fancy parties. The pregnant girl you saved. It means I'm forever in debt to someone who could destroy my life with a phone call if I displease him. The rawness in her voice made Sebastian wince. He had never considered how his help might feel like a trap to someone who had been betrayed before. Isabella, I would never. Marcus said the same thing, she interrupted, her voice growing stronger. He said he loved me, that his family's money didn't matter, that we'd figure everything out together, right up until the pregnancy test came back positive. Sebastian leaned forward, sensing this was the heart of her resistance. What happened? Isabella's eyes grew distant, lost in painful memories. His parents called me to their house, not to meet me properly, but to make me an offer. $50,000 to disappear quietly. No contact with Marcus, no claims on their family, no embarrassment to their reputation. The room fell silent, except for the steady beeping of medical monitors. Sebastian felt a cold anger building in his chest, not at Isabella, but at the callous cruelty she had endured. When I refused, Isabella continued, they made it clear that they had lawyers, private investigators, and enough influence to make my life very difficult if I caused problems. Marcus didn't even have the courage to face me himself. He sent a text message ending things. That's not love, Sebastian said quietly. That's cowardice. Maybe. But it taught me that when rich people offer help, there's always a price. Always. Isabella met his eyes directly. So forgive me if I don't trust your generosity, Mr. Blackwood. Experience has taught me better. Sebastian stood and walked to the window again, processing what she had told him. The city sprawled below, full of people like Marcus and his family. People who used money as a weapon rather than a tool for good. People like he himself had been for most of his adult life. You're right not to trust me, he said finally, surprising Isabella with his honesty. You don't know me well enough to trust me. But you're wrong about one thing. Which is? There is a price for my help. But it's not what you think. Sebastian turned back to face her. The price is that you have to let me prove that not everyone with money is like Marcus and his family. Isabella stared at him, confused by the unexpected response. I don't understand. I've spent most of my adult life being exactly the kind of person you think I am. Someone who uses wealth to control people, to maintain distance, to avoid real human connection. Sebastian's voice grew more intense. Meeting you last night made me realize how empty that life has become. So this is about you feeling better about yourself? Maybe partly, but it's also about you getting the chance you deserve without strings attached. Sebastian moved closer to her bed. Here's what I'm proposing, and you can say no without any consequences. Isabella tensed, waiting for the catch she was certain would come. I own several apartment buildings in this city. Good buildings, safe neighborhoods. You can have a one-bedroom apartment fully furnished for as long as you need it. No rent, no obligations, no contact with me unless you initiate it. That's impossible. No one gives away free housing. I'm not giving it away. I'm investing in something I believe in, the idea that people deserve second chances, and that sometimes helping someone requires nothing more than getting out of their way. Isabella shook her head, overwhelmed. I can't accept that. It's too much. Then don't think of it as charity. Think of it as me making amends for all the times I could have helped someone and didn't. For all the times I walked past people who needed exactly what I could easily provide. Dr. Kim knocked and entered, breaking the tension in the room. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to discuss Isabella's discharge plan. She's medically stable, but she needs a stress-free environment for the remainder of her pregnancy. She'll have one, Sebastian said immediately, then caught himself. That is, if she chooses to accept help. Isabella looked between Sebastian and Dr. Kim, feeling the weight of a decision that would change everything. Part of her wanted to refuse on principle, to maintain her independence even if it meant returning to the streets. But another part, the part that felt her baby moving inside her, whispered that sometimes survival required swallowing pride. If I accept, Isabella said slowly, what guarantees do I have? How do I know you won't change your mind? Or decide I owe you something I can't give? Sebastian reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. What's your lawyer's name? I don't have a lawyer. I can't afford. Then I'll provide one. Independent counsel who will represent only your interests. We'll draw up a legal agreement that protects you completely. The apartment is yours. No strings attached. No way for me to take it back or leverage it against you. Isabella stared at him in disbelief. You'd put that in writing? Legally binding? Absolutely. And if I ever violate the terms or try to pressure you for anything, You keep the apartment and I pay additional damages. Enough to ensure you and your child are secure for life. The offer was so far beyond anything Isabella had expected that she didn't know how to respond. It sounded too good to be true, which in her experience meant it usually was. But as she looked at Sebastian's face, she saw something she hadn't expected to find there. Genuine respect for her autonomy and understanding of why she needed these protections. "Why would you do all that?" she asked quietly. "Because you deserve to make this choice without fear. And because if I'm going to change the kind of person I am, I need to start with actions, not just words." For the first time since waking up, Isabella felt something other than suspicion and anger. She felt the possibility of hope, carefully guarded but real nonetheless. The question was whether she was brave enough to accept it. Isabella spent the rest of the day staring at the ceiling, weighing Sebastian's offer against every instinct that screamed it was too good to be true. When evening arrived, she had made her decision, but not for the reasons Sebastian might expect. "I'll accept your offer," she announced, when he returned with the promised legal documents. "But not because I trust you." Sebastian paused in the doorway, a leather briefcase in his hand, and an expression of cautious hope on his face. "Then why?" "Because my baby deserves better than what pride can provide." Isabella's voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. "I've been thinking about what kind of mother puts her own ego above her child's welfare. The answer is a selfish one." The lawyer Sebastian had brought, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria Chen, stepped forward with contracts that were thicker than any document Isabella had ever seen. As Victoria explained each clause designed to protect Isabella's interests, something unexpected happened. Sebastian's phone rang. The ringtone was harsh and demanding, cutting through the careful legal explanations like a knife. Sebastian glanced at the screen, and his face went pale. "I need to take this," he said, stepping into the hallway. Through the partially open door, Isabella could hear fragments of a heated conversation. "Told you I was handling something important. No, Mother, I can't just drop everything. It's not a business deal, it's... Yes, I understand the Henderson merger is worth millions, but..." Isabella exchanged glances with Victoria, who continued reviewing documents as if nothing had happened. But Isabella's attention was fixed on the conversation bleeding through the doorway. "You're being dramatic." "No, I haven't forgotten my responsibilities to the family. Mother, I'm 34 years old." "What do you mean, embarrassing behavior?" The conversation grew more heated, Sebastian's voice rising despite his obvious attempts to keep it quiet. Then came the words that made Isabella's blood run cold. "How did you find out about the hospital?" "No, it's not what you think. She's not some gold digger." "Mother, you had me followed." Isabella felt the familiar panic rising in her chest, the same feeling she'd had when Marcus's family had made their offer. She struggled to sit up in bed, her heart racing as the full implications hit her. Sebastian had been followed. Someone had been watching him, which meant someone had been watching her. Someone with enough resources to have him tracked, someone who clearly disapproved of his actions. The conversation in the hallway reached a crescendo. "I don't care what the board thinks. This is my life, not a corporate decision. No, I will not handle this quietly. Because it's the right thing to do, something our family seems to have forgotten." Sebastian's voice cracked with emotion on those last words, revealing depths of family dysfunction that Isabella hadn't suspected. When he finally returned to the room, his composed facade had cracked, showing the strain beneath. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Where were we with the contracts?" "Who was that?" Isabella asked directly, ignoring the legal documents spread across her bedside table. "No one important." "Don't lie to me. Not now." Isabella's voice carried a strength that surprised everyone in the room. "Someone had you followed. Someone knows about me." "Who?" Sebastian ran his hands through his hair, the polished businessman facade crumbling before their eyes. "My mother, Helen Blackwood." Victoria Chen looked up from the contracts, her expression grave. "Mr. Blackwood, if your family is opposed to this arrangement, it could complicate things legally." "How?" Isabella demanded, feeling the walls closing in around her again. "The Blackwood family has considerable influence in this city," Victoria explained carefully. "If they choose to make things difficult, they can destroy me," Isabella finished, the familiar weight of powerlessness settling on her shoulders. just like Marcus's family threatened to do. Sebastian moved closer to her bed, his expression desperate. Isabella, it's not the same situation. My mother doesn't control my decisions, doesn't she? Isabella's voice was bitter. You just spent 10 minutes on the phone defending your choices to her. That doesn't sound like independence to me. The truth in her words hit Sebastian like a physical blow. He realized that despite all his wealth and supposed autonomy, he was still seeking approval from a woman who had never given it freely. What exactly did your mother say about me? Isabella pressed, her protective instincts flaring. Sebastian hesitated, which told Isabella everything she needed to know. She called me a gold digger, didn't she? Said I was trying to trap you, manipulate you for money. Her words don't matter. They matter to me. Isabella's voice rose, causing the baby to kick in response to her agitation. Because they're going to matter to everyone else in your world. Your business partners, your social circle, your family. They're all going to see me as the pregnant girl who seduced the rich man. Victoria cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps we should postpone the contract signing until family concerns are addressed. No, Isabella said firmly, surprising both Sebastian and the lawyer. We're signing now, tonight. Isabella, if you're feeling pressured, Sebastian began. I'm not feeling pressured, I'm feeling realistic. Isabella's eyes blazed with determination. Your mother's reaction proves exactly why I need legal protection. If she's willing to have you followed after one night, what do you think she'll do when she realizes this arrangement is permanent? Sebastian felt a chill of recognition. His mother had destroyed relationships before. Business partnerships, friendships, romantic connections that didn't meet her approval. The realization that Isabella was right about the danger she faced made him feel sick. There's something else, Sebastian said quietly. Something you need to know before you sign anything. Isabella tensed, preparing for another revelation that would shatter her fragile hope. My mother mentioned the Henderson merger. It's a deal worth $200 million, and it's been in negotiation for months. If she's bringing it up now, it means she's considering using it as leverage. Leverage for what? To force me to end this arrangement. The Hendersons are old family friends, very traditional, very concerned with social propriety. If my mother convinces them that I'm making poor personal decisions, she'll sabotage your business to control your personal life, Isabella finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. She's done it before, Sebastian admitted, the words tasting bitter. I've never stood up to her when it mattered. I've always chosen the path that preserved family harmony and business interests. Isabella studied his face, seeing the decades of manipulation and control that had shaped him. And now? What are you choosing now? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sebastian realized this was the moment that would define not just what happened with Isabella, but who he was as a man. He could retreat to the safety of family approval and business success, or he could step into unknown territory where his choices were his own. I'm choosing to sign these contracts, he said, moving to the table where Victoria had laid out the documents. I'm choosing to keep my word, regardless of what my family thinks. Isabella watched him pick up the pen, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and terror. She was about to legally bind herself to a man whose own family saw her as a threat, whose business empire could be jeopardized by their association. But as Sebastian signed his name with steady strokes, Isabella realized something crucial. For the first time since Marcus had abandoned her, someone was willing to risk something real to stand by their word to her. The question was whether either of them was prepared for the war that was about to begin. The contracts were signed at midnight, witnessed by Victoria Chen and Dr. Kim, who had stayed late specifically for this purpose. As Sebastian's pen lifted from the final signature, Isabella felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. She was legally protected now, but protection on paper meant little against the kind of power the Blackwood family wielded. The apartment keys will be ready tomorrow, Victoria said, gathering the documents with professional efficiency. The building manager has been instructed to provide full access and ensure your privacy is maintained. After Victoria left, Isabella found herself alone with Sebastian for the first time since his mother's phone call. The weight of what they had just committed to hung between them like an unspoken question. You realize what you've just done, don't you? Isabella asked quietly. You've declared war on your own family. Sebastian loosened his tie, looking older than his years. I've been at war with my family my entire life. I just finally chose a side worth fighting for. Before Isabella could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. The number was unfamiliar, but the words made her blood freeze. We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow at Cafe Luna, 2 p.m. Come alone. Marcus. Isabella's hands began to shake as she read the message twice, 3 times, hoping the words would somehow change. Sebastian noticed her distress immediately. What is it? Isabella showed him the phone, watching his expression darken as he read the message. How did he get your number? Sebastian asked, his voice tight with concern. I don't know. I changed it weeks ago when… Isabella's voice trailed off as the implications hit her. Oh no, your mother. If she had you followed, if she investigated me… She found Marcus, Sebastian finished grimly. And now he wants to see you. Isabella struggled to sit up straighter in the hospital bed, her mind racing. This can't be a coincidence. He disappears for weeks, and suddenly the day after I sign contracts with you he wants to meet? Sebastian was already reaching for his phone. I'm calling security. You're not meeting him anywhere. No. Isabella's voice was firm enough to stop Sebastian mid-dial. I need to know what he wants. If I don't face this now, it'll only get worse. Isabella, you don't owe him anything. He abandoned you when you needed him most. Exactly. Which means if he's reaching out now, it's because someone made it worth his while. Isabella's eyes met Sebastian's. Your mother got to him, didn't she? She's using him to get to me. The truth of her words settled heavily in the room. Helen Blackwood had found Isabella's weakness and was preparing to exploit it. Then we face it together, Sebastian said. I'll come with you. Absolutely not. If this is a trap, I won't give them the satisfaction of seeing you walk into it. Isabella's voice carried a strength that surprised even her. Besides, Marcus is a coward. He won't try anything in a public place. The next afternoon, Isabella sat in Cafe Luna, wearing one of the outfits Sebastian had brought to the hospital. Simple jeans and a loose sweater that accommodated her growing belly. She had arrived early, choosing a table near the window where she could see the street and feel less trapped. Marcus walked in exactly at 2 o'clock, and Isabella's first thought was how much he looked like his old self. Expensive clothes, perfect hair, the confident stride of someone who had never faced real consequences for his actions. But when he approached her table, she could see something different in his eyes. Desperation. Isabella, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. You look good, healthy. Cut the small talk, Marcus. What do you want? Marcus glanced around the cafe nervously before leaning forward. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I want to make things right. Isabella almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Make things right? You sent me a text message ending our relationship when I was scared and pregnant and needed you most. There's no making that right. I was pressured. My parents, they threatened to cut me off completely if I didn't end things. I was scared and I made the wrong choice. Marcus reached across the table as if to take her hand, but Isabella pulled back. And now? What changed? Marcus's facade cracked slightly. I love you, Isabella. I never stopped loving you. When I heard about what happened to you, living on the streets, ending up in the hospital, I realized I couldn't live with myself if something happened to you and our baby. Our baby. Isabella's voice was dangerously quiet. Funny how it becomes our baby again when it's convenient for you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to be a father. I want us to be a family. Marcus leaned forward, his voice taking on the charm that had once made Isabella believe in their future together. My parents have come around. They want to meet you properly, to welcome you into the family. Isabella stared at him in disbelief. Your parents want to welcome me? The same parents who offered me $50,000 to disappear? That was before. Things have changed. What things, Marcus? What exactly has changed that suddenly makes me acceptable to your family? Marcus hesitated, and in that hesitation, Isabella saw the truth. They found out about Sebastian Blackwood, didn't they? Isabella's voice was steady despite the fury building inside her. They found out that I have protection now, legal contracts, resources they can't just dismiss. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. Isabella stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You didn't come here because you love me. You came here because your family is worried about what Sebastian and I might do together. They're worried about the optics, about how it looks that their son abandoned his pregnant girlfriend, and she ended up with someone more powerful than they are. Marcus's mask finally slipped completely. Isabella, please, just listen. They're willing to make a very generous offer. Here it comes, Isabella said, crossing her arms. Let me guess. Marriage, a trust fund for the baby, a beautiful life where I pretend to be grateful while they control every aspect of our existence. It's a good offer. Better than anything you'll get from Blackwood. You'll be family, legally protected, with rights and status. The baby will have everything. The best schools, the best opportunities. And all I have to do is pretend that you didn't abandon me when I needed you most. Pretend that your parents didn't try to buy me off like I was some kind of problem to be solved. Marcus stood as well, his desperation becoming more apparent. Isabella, be practical. Blackwood is using you to make himself feel better about his wealth. Once the novelty wears off, you'll be back where you started. But with me, with my family, you'll have security forever. Isabella felt her baby kick, as if responding to the tension in the room. The movement reminded her of everything she was fighting for. You're right about one thing, Marcus. I need to be practical. Isabella's voice was calm but final. The practical choice is to stay far away from you and your family. The practical choice is to trust the man who helped me when I had nothing over the man who abandoned me when I needed everything. You're making a mistake, Marcus said, his charm finally giving way to anger. My family won't let this go. They have lawyers, connections, influence you can't imagine. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. Choose carefully, Isabella, because once you walk away from this offer, there won't be another one. Isabella looked at Marcus for a long moment, seeing clearly for the first time the weak, entitled man she had once thought she loved. Good, she said simply, because I would never accept another one. As she walked away from the cafe, leaving Marcus sitting alone at their table, Isabella felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Complete certainty about her choice. Whatever challenges lay ahead with Sebastian and his family, she would face them knowing she had chosen strength over security, respect over resignation. But as she stepped onto the sidewalk, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus's warning wasn't just empty bluster. The war between the families was about to begin, and she was standing directly in the crossfire. 3 months had passed since the confrontation at Café Luna, and the war between the families had escalated beyond anything Isabella could have imagined. The Blackwood-Henderson merger had indeed been sabotaged, costing Sebastian's company millions and earning him the fury of his business partners. Marcus's family had hired private investigators who documented every moment of Isabella's life, searching for ammunition to use against her. But through it all, Sebastian had stood firm. Isabella sat in the living room of her apartment, a beautiful space overlooking Central Park that had become her sanctuary, reading the morning newspaper with growing amazement. The headline made her hands tremble. Blackwood heir establishes billion-dollar foundation for single mothers. The article detailed Sebastian's announcement from the previous day. He had liquidated half his assets to create the Isabella Martinez Foundation, providing housing, health care, and legal protection for pregnant women in crisis. The foundation's mission statement was simple but powerful. Every woman deserves the choice to keep her child without sacrificing her dignity. A soft knock at the door interrupted her reading. Isabella opened it to find Sebastian standing in the hallway, looking nervous in a way she had never seen before. "Did you see the newspaper?" he asked, stepping inside. "Half your fortune, Sebastian? Are you completely insane?" Isabella's voice mixed concern with incredulity. Probably, but it felt right. Sebastian moved to the window, looking out at the city where so many women faced the same impossible choices Isabella had confronted. "Besides, I kept the important half." "The important half?" "The half that lets me sleep at night knowing I'm using my privilege for something that matters." Isabella studied his profile, seeing the man he had become over these past months. The polished businessman facade had been replaced by something real, someone who had chosen principle over profit, conviction over comfort. "Your mother must be furious," Isabella said softly. Sebastian's laugh was bitter. "My mother disowned me yesterday. Officially, complete with lawyers and public statements about protecting the family reputation from poor judgment." Isabella felt a stab of guilt. "Sebastian, I never wanted you to lose your family." "I didn't lose my family. I chose a different one." Sebastian turned to face her, his expression serious. "Isabella, there's something I need to tell you." something I should have said months ago. Before Isabella could respond, another knock interrupted them. This time it was Dr. Kim, making her weekly home visit to check on Isabella's pregnancy. "How are we feeling today?" Dr. Kim asked, unpacking her medical bag with practiced efficiency. "Nervous," Isabella admitted. "The baby's due any day now." As Dr. Kim conducted her examination, Isabella caught Sebastian watching with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. There was something in his eyes, hope, fear, and something deeper that made her heart race. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Kim announced. "Baby is in optimal position. All vitals are strong. You could deliver tonight or next week. Babies choose their own timing." After Dr. Kim left, Isabella found Sebastian pacing the living room like a caged animal. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's about to change." Sebastian stopped pacing and looked directly at her. "Isabella, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "Okay. Do you think there's a chance, any chance at all, that what we have could become something more than just legal protection and mutual respect?" The question hung in the air between them like a bridge neither had dared to cross. Isabella felt her pulse quicken as she realized they were finally addressing the elephant that had been in every room they'd shared. "Sebastian, Her words were cut off by a sharp pain that doubled her over, then another, and another. "The baby!" Isabella gasped, gripping the back of a chair. "It's time!" The next 12 hours blurred together in a whirlwind of hospital corridors, medical equipment, and the most intense experience of Isabella's life. Through it all, Sebastian remained by her side, holding her hand during contractions, advocating with nurses when she was too exhausted to speak for herself, and providing the steady presence she hadn't known she needed. At 3:47 a.m., Sofia Elena Martinez came into the world with a cry that announced her determination to make her presence known. As Dr. Kim placed the tiny, perfect baby in Isabella's arms, the room fell silent except for the sound of new life breathing for the first time. "She's beautiful," Sebastian whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he looked down at the baby who had brought them together. Isabella stared at her daughter's face, so small, so perfect, so completely dependent on her for everything. In that moment, every sacrifice, every difficult choice, every moment of fear and uncertainty crystallized into pure purpose. "Sophia," Isabella said softly, "meet the man who saved both our lives." Sebastian reached out tentatively, and Isabella placed Sophia's tiny hand in his palm. The baby's fingers automatically curled around his thumb, creating a connection that brought tears to his eyes. "Isabella," Sebastian said quietly, "may I answer your question from earlier?" "What question?" "About whether what we have could become something more." Sebastian looked from Sophia to Isabella, his heart completely visible in his expression. "I fell in love with you the night I found you on those library steps. Not because you needed saving, but because you were so determined to save yourself. I fell in love with your strength, your integrity, your refusal to compromise your values even when it would have been easier." Isabella felt tears streaming down her face. "Sebastian, I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm not asking you to be grateful or to feel obligated. I'm just asking if you'll let me earn the right to be part of this family you've created, to be Sophia's father figure, your partner, your friend, whatever you're comfortable with." Isabella looked down at Sophia, then back at Sebastian. "You want to know what I think? More than anything, I think Sophia is the luckiest little girl in the world, because she's going to grow up seeing what it looks like when someone chooses love over fear, principle over profit, and family over everything else." "Is that a yes?" Isabella smiled through her tears. "That's a yes to whatever this becomes, as long as it's real and it's ours." As dawn broke over Manhattan, three people who had found each other in the most unexpected circumstances settled into their new reality. Isabella had discovered that sometimes the most important family is the one you choose. Sebastian had learned that true wealth couldn't be measured in dollars, but in the lives you touch and the love you give. And Sophia would grow up knowing that she was wanted, protected, and cherished from her very first breath. 5 years later, the Isabella Martinez Foundation had helped over 10,000 women keep their children while maintaining their independence. Sebastian had rebuilt his business empire on ethical principles, proving that success didn't require sacrificing integrity. And Isabella had completed her law degree with Sebastian's support, becoming an advocate for women's rights and family justice. But on quiet Sunday mornings, when Sophia curled up between them reading picture books, none of their professional accomplishments mattered as much as the simple miracle of the family they had built together. Sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with someone having nowhere to go, and finding that home isn't a place, but the people who choose to love you unconditionally.